Hello, everybody. I am reporting live today. It's 4 p.m. Monday in Florida. And today I'm really excited to be with Scott Phipps. And we're going to be talking about the latest campaign that I've been very fortunate and blessed to be a part of. How you doing, Scott?
Doing fine. Thank you, Alex. Good to see you again.
Yes. I hope you've been getting some good sleep because putting in the hours.
No, I really haven't, but I will, starting tonight, I think. So in any event, it's been a busy time because I spent literally a week off and on writing this article that we just released for the National Health Federation, all about this coronavirus, the COVID-19, as they call it, sort of thing. And so we're getting a lot of positive response from it.
We really are. Every person I've shared it with so far is extremely grateful, and it's just the time it takes, to read it. It's about, a good 15, 20-minute read, and can expand quite a bit with all the great sources and links in it. And then...
Well, one of the things I appreciate is that you did exactly what the article was asking people to do, Alex, and that is you got in touch with your congressional representative through the staff, and you submitted the pledge and presumably the article as well. I don't recall what you said on that, but in any event, you got the ball rolling to get your congressional representative to sign the form and then return it to the NHF office so we can, or at least a copy of it, so we can compile a list of all the people who have agreed to this. And so basically, if I may, what we're talking about here in the article, of course, is the one that just came out on Saturday evening. Never has so little done so much harm to so many, which of course is a play on words with the Winston Churchill quote about the RAF and the Battle of Britain. Never have so many, and never have so few done so much for so many. But this is, in a harmful way, this is what's been going on here with the coronavirus. And what has happened is the government has taken something that, and I don't mean to minimize it, the coronavirus, COVID-19, is not something to laugh at. It's something to be taken seriously. So nothing that I say here today or tonight or this afternoon, as the case may be, is to be construed to the contrary. But what we have is a situation where it's been blown all out of proportion. It's being used to destroy our civil and constitutional liberties, and not just in America, not just in Canada, but around the world. And people are getting involved in what I would call a collective hysteria that is just taking them over the edge, like a lot of lemmings running off a cliff to the sharp rocks below. And it's even a big question right now as to when the lockdown does end, and it's just starting to be lifted here in certain parts of Europe, but in America it's supposed to continue for a while and even strengthen in some places. But will the economy be able to recover from this severe jolt after the lockdown, the quarantine, the martial law really is what it is ended? That's the real question. And a lot of lives, a lot of livelihoods are being ended. In fact, the unemployment rate, there was about 6.6 million that had applied, and now it's gone up to 10 million. 10 million people.
That's just that's states, right?
Millions of people. That's just recent figures. And just to give the date, it's April 6th, Monday, April 6th. So we're talking just the first week of April. This is the change.
I heard, if I may add real quick, in Florida, the actual system crashed, like the whole portal that
I'm not surprised.
So I'm sure that might be happening in potentially other states as well. And really, that's what we're trying to do with this pledge. And the pledge is designed to be applicable in just about any country, even though we are focused, on the United States. But that's why the pledge
right.
is, useful.
Right. No, very well said.
It's imperative. And Scott, I will add, I've been very respectful to the government officials I've reached out to, but I will be stern if need be to remind them that they are our public servants. We hired them, you know, and there's that reality of just how important it is for them to pledge and sign sooner than later.
Yes. Well, what I might say, it's saying that my internet connection is unstable, so I hope you can hear me all right. But what I wanted, is it all right?
Mm-hmm.
What I wanted to say, Alex, is that, and you really led me to this by your just made statement a few seconds ago, and that is that really you approached your public officials respectfully, and it's not just your federal Congress critter, it's not your U.S. senator, but it's also the state senator. It's also the state representative. It's also your police chief. It's also your county sheriff. It could even be your county coroner. You know, the county coroner in the counties in the United States are actually more powerful than the sheriffs, because the county coroner is the only person who can actually arrest a sheriff in that county.
Wow.
At least for state reasons. And so even the county coroner has a lot of power. So the point is that we, getting back to your approach, which I really think is the right one, you approach public servants, or at least they're supposed to be. Unfortunately, so much of the politician stratosphere is populated by psychopaths who just, you know, crave power, that they kind of lose their heads once they get in there, and they think they are kind of a anointed God on earth kind of creature, and they know so much better than the rest of us. But the fact of the matter is that a lot of them are in their own little bubbles. They're isolated. They really get just told certain things by lobbyists and attorneys and hatchet men and women and other politicians, and they're kind of like in a hall of mirrors with a lot of echo speak. So they don't really know how the people really feel. Now, there are some exceptions, obviously. There are people who listen to others out there. I could name names, but it's not important right now. The fact of the matter is, if they refuse to sign the pledge, which is very innocent, and maybe at the end we kind of go into this a little bit more, but if they refuse to sign it, then you get a bit more persistent, insistent even, and demand really that they sign it. And if they refuse to sign it, then you say, okay, we're making it known that you've refused to sign the pledge. And it's a very simple pledge. It basically commits them to say that they will not enact legislation or enforce legislation, in the case of the sheriffs or the police chiefs, that will
Violate
deny your violate, thank you, your constitutional rights. And that includes mandatory chipping, which has been proposed by our fabulous Bill Gates out there, and the mandatory vaccine that he recommends.
When did he become?
And he's unfortunately a voice that is listened to. Yeah, well, it's an excellent question.
We know, I don't know about you, but
God's gift.
Has his PC been able to stop viruses for you? I don't want to digress, but I'm just trying to find some lightheartedness to this whole situation. You know, the guy who his computer tend to not be virus.
Has he? Well, it's.
Oh.
Yeah, the connection's kind of going there. But if I understood you correctly, has he been able to stop any virus? No.
No, with his
he hasn't. He just thinks the vaccine.
Well, I'm talking about computer.
Oh, with the computer. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, I got it.
You know,
yeah, well,
because there might be something with that too, because it's a way to. Like,
that's a very astute question. Yeah, no.
Yeah. But anyway, like I know our time is.
Well, no, I think
critical right now.
Steve Jobs did a better job of stopping computer viruses than Bill Gates ever did. But
the bottom line is he's not an elected official, and he's not a doctor. And people are like,
no.
Some people are looking up to him like he's in charge of.
Well, If I had a foundation with $52 billion in the till, I would be looked up to that same way as well. You know, they gave $2.5 billion, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, to the World Health Organization to promote vaccines and all of that because, well, when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And so he just has one tool at his disposal when in fact there are tons of tools out there to protect people from coronavirus or any virus. Ways to do it. It's being done right this minute as I'm speaking. It's being done in China and other places where they use intravenous vitamin C to cure people, where they use the substance that was recommended by President Trump to cure people, along with zinc and with the pack, erythromycin. And so that combination has proven to be quite effective. There's even a doctor in, I think it's Brooklyn, who had a good number of patients, and they all got well from this because of his using that sort of triple method of curing people. He had 600 patients, cost him $20 each to be treated.
You saw what I
They
shared.
got well. No one died.
You saw what I shared with you, how some doctors are being blocked at a higher level for prescribing that.
Yes, they are. You're right. And I didn't have, I'd already run my article to over 6,600 words, so I didn't have time to really get into the discussion on that. But it is a big problem because the medical mafia is really closing ranks to shut out anything other than vaccine use to prevent this. But it's going to take them at least a year. Some people say 2 years. Gottlieb, the former FDA commissioner, says 2 years to construct a working vaccine. But by then, really, the coronavirus will have come and gone. We'll be on to the next one. And then they'll have to start all over again. But we have the means to address this problem right now. And it's not by locking down communities. It's not by destroying people's jobs and livelihoods or businesses. It's simply by focusing on those at high risk, and those at high risk from the coronavirus, the COVID-19, are the elderly, the immune system compromised, and smokers. Anyone who has a deficiency in their lungs. You know, they might already be sick from TB. 1.7 million people a year die from TB.
Asthma and things like
well,
that.
And the interesting thing, and this is not going to make me popular with the certain crowds of the population, but you'll notice that in America, the biggest infection rates for COVID-19 are where the immigration rate is the highest. You know, it's California, it's Texas, it's along the borders, and it's in New York where a lot of immigrants come in, and even in parts of Florida. But really, New York is the hotbed. You have a ton of immigrants coming in there, and this is a problem because a lot of them have latent tuberculosis in their lungs, and if their immune system becomes compromised, it sort of explodes and gets out there. And I'm sorry, I have to look up his last name, but Hiroshi Nisashuri, and forgive my pronunciation of that, but in 2012 he showed that none of the people he had tested had died except those of the virus, except those who actually had tuberculosis as well, or at least a mycobacterium. And what Bill Sardi has suggested in all his studies and research on this, throughout all the medical literature, all the statistics and all of that, is that this could be the COVID-19 is really just a carrier virus, a companion virus, and it's not the cause of the death. And he shows some statistics where some people, doctors that is, had more success using antibiotics than in using antivirals. Now, this is very strange because if it's a virus, the antibiotics are ineffective on destroying or harming or inhibiting in any way viruses. They only work on bacteria or the sort. But so it should be antivirals that are working. So if the antivirals aren't working, then what's the story here? I mean, this is very, very strange. So
it's almost as if
it looks like.
Sorry.
Pardon?
I was going to say, like, it's almost as the antibacterial. It's actually maybe strengthening the immune system, or it's lowering the load of maybe parasites in the body or things like that. That are.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head, and so what we have is a situation where a lot of people are getting well. Most people, 80%, no symptoms at all, or very few symptoms. After a few weeks, they're over it, if not even just 1 week, and then they have lifelong immunity. So instead of having this maniac, Bill Gates trot out his vaccine in a year or two, which, has aluminum in it. Almost certainly it will have aluminum in it. Might have mercury in it, although they're trying to hold back on that. Polysorbate 80, fetal cells. Basically, when they create these vaccines, what they aren't telling people is that they have the kitchen sink approach, because they're throwing everything into the vaccine, so that including the either live virus or the dead virus, but these days they prefer the live virus. And so this way, if they have the kitchen sink approach where they throw everything they can think of in there to trigger the immune system, then the patient will have more of an immune system response to the vaccine, and the vaccine will take. I mean, that's their philosophy. The downside to their philosophy is, well, you have aluminum that's injected at many times the safe level that's been declared by the Environmental Protection Agency. You have mercury at many times the level that's been declared safe by the Environmental Protection Agency. And that's just ingestion by the EPA, or breathing it in. That's not by actual injection. You inject it and you bypass all the body's evolved mechanisms to try to handle these sort of things. So it's extremely dangerous. And in fact, to this day, they'll tell you otherwise, but there's been no valid safety study ever conducted on a vaccine. There's been no valid efficacy study ever conducted on these vaccines. The typical vaccine follow-through rate is about 4.5 days. 4.5 days, you barely have time to react to it. In many cases, it's 4.5 years, 5 years or more for a typical drug approval from the United States FDA, Food and Drug Administration. So here they're just rushing through these vaccines, and they're doing it because they have no liability. It doesn't matter if they kill 1 million people or one person, because they have zero liability to if they cause any harm. They don't have to pay anything.
That's really unacceptable. It really is, because I'm aware of this, and it's just completely unacceptable. It's an insult to our intelligence and our health freedom.
But what they're doing to justify all of this, and these are clever people. I mean, they may be psychopaths, but they're psychopaths can be brilliant. Actually, Hitler, Stalin were both psychopaths. Mussolini was a psychopath. I mean, the list is endless. But the fact of the matter is, these are brilliant people, but they aren't God, and they do make mistakes. And what they've done in this case is, and we don't know, and quite honestly, Alex, we really don't care, but the virus somehow, the coronavirus that was released in Wuhan, was either released from a bioweapons laboratory, because that's what the Wuhan lab is, or it was somehow given to them or stolen by them. We really are unclear on this. Dr. Francis Boyle says it was stolen by the Chinese government. Others are just as adamant that no, the US government played this trick on the poor Chinese and released it there, and to make it look like the Chinese had done it, when in fact they hadn't. And then all this ill will is showered on the Chinese people when they actually were the victims and not the aggressors. We don't know the story, but you know what? It doesn't matter. It's out there. But what does matter is, what is the death rate? What's the mortality rate? And right now it's being blown all out of proportion. But what we have is we have our own, government officials out there, and they say, oh, this is like 10 times more deadly than SARS and MERS and all of that. Well, it isn't. And if you look at the, if you look at the, that was not a coronavirus. March 26th issue of the New England Journal of Medicine, you see our now famous, now infamous Dr. Anthony Fauci. And he says in this, he co-authored it, so it's not entirely just his words, but he signed on to it, so they are his words. And he says, and I'm reading now from the journal, the New England Journal of Medicine, if one assumes that the number of asymptomatic, that is, people who aren't showing symptoms, or minimally symptomatic cases, and I'll insert here, of coronavirus cases, is several times as high as the number of reported cases, the case fatality rate may be considerably less than 1%. So what he means by that is that a lot of the figures that the mainstream media is putting out there and the mainstream doctors are putting out there are the really severe cases that end up in the hospital, and then what percent of those cases die. And then on top of that, what they do is, doesn't matter if the person was hit by a truck, doesn't matter if he died of a heart attack, doesn't matter if she died of COVID-19 virus, then they consider it a COVID-19 death and they count it. So here you have people who go to the hospital, of those certain percent die, and a lot of them have comorbidities, that is, coexistent diseases in there as well. So they take that, and this is the figure. This figure right here are the deaths. These are the ones that end up in the hospital. Those are the ones, so that's where they get their percentage rate, the death rate. But the reality is, as Fauci's writing in the New England Journal of Medicine, again, he says, if one assumes that the number of asymptomatic or minimally symptomatic cases is several times as high as the number of reported cases, because remember what I said, they're looking at, we are seeing over about 80%, in some cases over 80% of the people who catch this, they just are asymptomatic. They show no symptoms. They recover normally. They go about their daily lives. Of course, it's a little rough patch that they hit the road, just like catching the flu might be, or a common cold or that. And then they're over it. But they aren't counting those in the mortality rate. If you did, it would be so much more different. And that's why he concludes by saying, this suggests that the overall clinical consequences of COVID-19 may ultimately be more akin to those of a severe seasonal influenza, which has a case fatality rate of approximately 0.1%, or a pandemic influenza, similar to those in 1957 and 1968. Who here remembers that there were no quarantines in 1957, 1968, at least not mass quarantines? Rather than a disease similar to SARS, severe acute respiratory syndrome, or MERS, which have had case fatality rates of 9 to 10% and 36% respectively. So here Dr. Fauci, who gets up on the TV and announces to the world that this is COVID-19 is 10 times deadlier than the flu, he's lying. I mean, he's already admitted on March 26th with a publication in the New England Journal of Medicine that it's probably these are his words, considerably less than 1%. So a lot of people are being panicked, driven to hysteria over nothing more than the seasonal.
This is a crime.
It's a crime.
If he's lying, it's a crime.
Be brought to justice for it.
And I would add to it, it's not just lying. Like it most likely is some type of script. Like he may be acting, for how long he's been doing this. And I wanted to mention earlier, I know we're not going to get into it right now, but you know about Bill Gates's father, how he ran Planned Parenthood. That's what Bill Gates's father.
Well, no, you're educating me now. I mean, I kind of knew something about it, but I probably forgot it long ago.
It just, I'm not going to, you know, I know what we're focused on right now is the pledge, but it's like, come on, there's enough red flags here with Bill Gates and then the connections with Fauci. And, you know, I've read some numbers that it may be through Gates Foundation funding. The World Health Organization is like 50% like funded somehow. And, you know, it kind of indirectly by all these different nonprofits and NGOs that the Gates Foundation, you know, funds in a similar way to George Soros, and kind of he's had this dominance over NGOs as well. But that's all I'll really say. But it's just, when we talk about somebody lying like this is a very serious crime. So, I mean, somehow there needs to be a class action lawsuit or something.
Well, you won't find me disagreeing with that. And in fact, actually, a lot of the actions the government is taking, certainly the federal government, are completely unconstitutional. They have no constitutional basis for taking any of these actions. And indeed, I think people are subject to a lawsuit under Title 42 for that, individual actors. But the thing that concerns me is whether they caused this directly or whether they seized an opportunity not to let a crisis go to waste. The fact of the matter is that they've enacted a lot of unconstitutional measures that are really hurting and our liberties. And I think they're doing it, as some have suggested, just to sort of test us out, you know, to if indeed we will submit to this. And in fact, what they're finding is probably very satisfying to them. They're finding that we are indeed, most of the population at least, is submitting. So if we're submitting to this kind of mishandling, then how will we handle when they announce everyone has to be vaccinated? Or if you want to travel internationally, you're going to have to get this vaccination, and so on. And so that's what the pledge is about stopping it. Now, I want to interject something I just kind of learned today. So it's not in my article, which, by the way, anyone who's listening to this hasn't already read my article, go to the NHF website.
I'll pull it up real quick, Scott.
Okay.
All right, here it is. Can you see?
Go to thenhf.com and look on the homepage. You'll see the article there on the homepage. And thank you, Alex, for pulling that up. Anyway, it's posted there, and through the links at the bottom, you can write your senator, you can senators, you can write your Congress critter, you can write whomever you want, but certainly those three individuals. And it has a proposed letter there, but obviously feel it's customizable. You can customize it. And there's the pledge. Thank you. And it's made so it can be used in other countries, not just the U.S. Notice it doesn't say uphold the U.S. Constitution. But here's the point. You know, we've done the National Health Federation, is a nonprofit health freedom organization. We've been around for 65 years, more than 65 years. We've run a lot of different types of campaigns. In the past, we have done campaigns that are trying to minimize this window for myself, but it's not working.
Here, do you want me to get the pledge right now? I was pulling up the website, but
yeah, I see the pledge on my screen.
Yeah, now you should see the homepage. So we were on your article, and then I figured I would share the homepage for people to get a little taste.
Well, thank you for that. But what I wanted to finish saying actually is that if you click through as well, beyond just sending the letter to your public servants, then you will see a flyer that we created and the pledge, and we would ask that you submit those, preferably in person, but if not, mail them in, send them in, email them in, and stay on top of your representative to get him or her to sign the pledge.
This is
Now,
the flyer, Scott, what I pulled up here? Don't even think about it?
no, that's the introductory statement that
Okay.
explains what the letter is all
Okay, the
about.
flyer's right here, actually, so
Yeah.
we'll go in a second.
If you click on the second here, then that will lead you to the "Don't Even Think About It" flyer. And I think we have to really start getting rough here, because if they succeed in pulling the wool over eyes on all of this and getting the American people and other people to submit, then there's no limit to what they will do. I really think this is the defining moment of this decade, is what we do and how we act right now. And if we just sit back and watch our extra programs on television, listen to the mainstream media, which is continuously lying to us, and there are many examples of that, with their false claims about overflooded hospitals and these highly inflated death rates, and showing an Italian hospital that's full as some sort of New York hospital. The exact same footage aired by Sky News was used by CBS News, and CBS News had to retract it, had to apologize for it. But this is just part and parcel of what they do day in, day out. You can't believe a word that they say on the mainstream media. And so you have to almost literally take your TV and throw it out the window. Just be careful not to hit anyone down below. But the thing is that, pardon?
I'm just laughing because trying
okay.
to be a little light. I'm actually printing the flyer out right now.
Oh, great. Okay. Well, that's what we want to be done. And so the thing is, in the past many campaigns with NHF and other organizations as well, we have done the letter writing approach, and there's nothing wrong with that. We've done the petition approach. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think the pledge, even though our public servants can, of course, easily break a pledge, they do it all the time. But I mean, that's how they get elected, frankly. But with the pledge, at least we have them signing on the dotted line and dating it, that they are agreeing that they will not support mandatory vaccinations on these kind of issues, and they won't support Bill Gates' mandatory chipping idea, to show that you've been vaccinated as some sort of mark of the beast to make it through America and be able to travel from Austin to Dallas or Tampa to Fort Lauderdale. And you have to have a proof that you haven't had the horrible, dreaded COVID-19 disease, which so far has killed fewer people than a normal flu season. So it's really important to press this on your police chief, your sheriff, your state and federal legislators. It's not just U.S. And if you're in another country, to have your, member of parliament or whomever sign it as well. It's written in a very country neutral way. And then send us a copy at NHF, email it, scan it, email it, whatever, and we will collate all of these and keep them together. You can either hang on to the original and send us the copy, or vice versa. It doesn't matter. But the point is, we need to do this. This is probably the most important thing you could do this year, if not even this decade, is to do this and be persistent. If they turn you down the first time, don't take no for an answer. Get your friends together and go back there and say, look, we all want you to sign this. And then I have another step for you out there if you're listening to this still. And that is, if they flatly refuse to sign it, then let NHF know that as well. So we can prepare a list of those who refused and those who agreed. And we will get the word out on those, on the angels and the demons, so to speak.
Well, Scott, look, I got it. I just printed out the flyer.
Good. Oh, great. Okay.
Took action immediately, and I got in preparation, because like I said, I'm waiting on the person I reached out to is actually, like I mentioned to you before we started the video, he's an assistant for Pinellas County Commissioner. So I asked him to please read the article, let me know his thoughts, and then basically I'm trying to encourage him to want to do it on his own volition, but if need be, I will be, very stern about it. as well.
Well, I'm very encouraged. Thank you, Alex. And you're like the poster guy for this action. Thank you. You're the
Well,
first one I've heard doing this. But I'm very encouraged not only by what you've done, but Lou Rockwell has this wonderful website, lourockwell.com, L-E-W, not L-O-U, L-E-W, Rockwell.com, and it's full of the best information on this subject. Indeed, in my own article, I link to some of the articles that have appeared on Lou Rockwell, and he was kind enough to post today, April 6, 2020, post today my article on his website, and it's seen by many. So I would encourage all of you out there, spread my article, please, wide and far. And if for some weird reason you aren't willing to do that,
leave a comment, please, too. I don't
and
interrupt, but please leave a comment down below. And
there's a comment section, and it will stay open. But the other thing is the "Don't Even Think About It" flyer and the pledge don't even have NHF's names on it. Feel free to appropriate that for your own use. You can stamp your own organization's name on it. I don't care, but get that out there. Just be sure to let us know if you do have someone in a position of authority who signed it, and get back to us through our website and through the
what's the best way for people to send it to the NHF?
Well, they could just do it at contact us. That's contact -us at NHF.com, and we'll get the message, and it'll get to the right person.
Right.
The staff there have been alerted to look for anything incoming. Otherwise, if you don't have access to the internet for some weird reason, although I've noticed my internet has slowed down quite a bit since the middle of March, but
eventually we'll get people to kind of do a template, like to keep it organized, like email to say specifically like where they're at, or the person,
right?
The official.
Yeah, that's a good point. What their title is, all of that. But what I was going to say is basically you can also mail it in if that works. And we also have a fax number. You can fax it in. So there are 3 different ways. Or you can hand it to us. But there are 4 different ways to get it to us. And
mailing address for anybody listening?
It would just be our P.O. Box would be the best one. So P.O. Box 688.
688.
And that's in Monrovia, California. That's MONROVIA, California. And the zip code is 91017. 91017 in the USA. So even if it's done in a different country, we'd appreciate getting a copy of it to see what kind of progress has been done there. Now, if everyone does this and it gets out there exponentially, logarithmically, then we could really make a difference on this. At the very least, even if the campaign fails to get a majority of the people signing it, of course we won't get a majority, but hopefully we'll get
anything's possible.
But anything's possible. But the fact of the matter is, they will see our response, and it will be an angry response, and it'll be one that says, we know what you're up to, we know what you're doing, we can see where we're headed here, and it's not going to happen.
This is what it's supposed to be for, right?
Yeah. Well, the point is, they will get a message that they aren't getting in their little bubbles, when only the pharmaceutical industry is talking to them, only the medical association, the medical mafia is talking to them, and they think they know the pulse of the nation and all of that. We need to pop that bubble. We need to get the message to everyone. This is not the case. We have a lot of constituents out there, and what everyone who are angry about this, they want the lockdown ended. We want our constitutional rights back. We don't want any mandatory vaccines or any of these mandatory medical procedures. I mean, for heaven's sake, they violate the Nuremberg Code from 1947, the one against fully medical procedures being performed without your fully informed consent. And so the idea is, let's let our anger be heard, and let's kill this little plot of theirs in its crib and not let it expand until it's too late and everyone submits. But we really have to do something now. It's not something, oh, I'll put it in the pile and think about it later. You have to do it now.
Well, I guess in the interest of time, I'm going to get on to uploading this video ASAP so it can be uploaded. And we'll go from there, and maybe we'll do another video and we could talk a little bit about 5G, since that's also a big one right now. No health safety studies have been done similar to vaccines. You know, it's a very eerie pattern here that's emerging.
That's a very good point. And a lot of people have argued that the 5G weakens the immune system so much that it makes a lot of people susceptible to the COVID-19 disease. In fact, one of the first cities worldwide to have full rollout of 5G was, you guessed it, Wuhan, China. And the other close second, the other close second was Milan, Italy. So these are exactly where the hotspots first erupted. So there's even a question, is the 5G causing the problem? And how is this really happening? And then you have California Governor Gavin Newsom, sneaking into, during the lockdown, sneaking into the public schools and installing 5G there. So really, what's going on with 5G? It's not anything good. And it's not just about something that's 100,000 times faster than 4G, or is it 100 million? I've forgotten. Anyway, 10 million or 100,000, I forget where the decimal point goes. But it doesn't matter. It's not just about a faster connection speed. That's part of it. But the real thing is what they can do to use it to get data points off of each of us and control our lives. Meanwhile, birds are dying and dropping from the skies. Bees are dying. People are dying from this 5G. So at least those are some of the reports. So we need to be very, very careful about any of this new technology. And like you pointed out, Alex, there's really been no safety study that we know of that's been scientifically conducted that supports the safety of this 5G network.
Yep. Last thing I'll add, just how important it is to read the article. I actually had to go out to a park, and read it to kind of really, just be in quiet and in nature to really let it all sink in. And I'm still going through it because of all the additional, links and sources contained in it. So I learned actually in your article, Scott, about the Wuhan lab actually has the highest military security clearance, I believe.
Yes,
so
yes, it does. It's level 4, and it's
and supposedly 5G's been a military weapon.
Yes,
I don't know if you've looked into that, but there's patents and what they call like crowd control and making people nauseous from directed energy. Weapon.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It's a military weapon as much as a communications means. Now, before I go, I was just reminding myself of something, and that is that for those of you who are skeptical out there about, mandatory vaccines never happen, well, just remember this. In mid-March of this year, the Danish Parliament passed a law authorizing the government to test, with their inaccurate tests, by the way, anyone they want in Denmark in order to determine if they've been infected with COVID-19 and to even forcibly inject that person or persons with a vaccine. Of course, the vaccine doesn't exist yet, but they passed this law. That was just 2-3 weeks ago that they did that. There were 95 Danish parliamentarians who voted on this, and they should all be thrown out of office as soon as possible for having violated their oath of office to the Danish people, the Danish citizens. So it can and very much will happen unless we take action to stop it in this and every other country that we can.
We're doing it. We're taking action.
Good.
Full speed ahead. So assemble the troops, the movement for health freedom, and we've just got to keep trekking along.
Yeah,
Got it.
it's true. Well, you know, it's a serious matter that we're facing, but we've faced many worse during the course of our lifetimes. The 57, 68-year flus and epidemic were far worse. Even the one in 2017 spiked with more deaths than this 3 years later, and yet there was no quarantine there. So clearly they have an agenda,
Well,
and we need to.
the last thing I'd like to say, Scott, because I really feel like we could do a good deep dive in 5G, is the reality that, you know, we're made of cells, and our cells are made of atoms, and basically we're talking about frequency and energy. And so there are some interesting patterns about the electrification of our civilization and how it's also coincided with some of these, you know, outbreaks, or now what we're calling a pandemic or plandemic. So anyways, it's just that kind of reality. Like, you know, I may even say like the spiritual aspect of
Yes. Yeah.
as well. So I look forward to producing, you know, that video with you, because
Thank you.
now I really
Let's
think there's a
let's yeah,
so,
let's do that. Thank you.
yep. Thank you so much, Scott, for your time, for all your hard work. We really appreciate it a lot, and
Well,
I'm really looking forward to people taking inspired action, printing out the flyer, printing out the pledge, and you know, just taking the power into their own hands, basically, instead of, you know, choosing to be worried or choosing to be upset. So
yeah,
I'd like that.
that's what we need to do. Thank you, Alex. You really said it perfectly there. We really need to not submit to what they're throwing at us. It's very dangerous. It's a very dangerous time. So thank you, and I'll say good night, and until next time.
Sounds
Okay.
great. I'm going to upload this immediately. So.
Thanks.